Great politicians do more than just draft policies. They master the art of storytelling that resonates. And that's part of what makes Sheila so special. On the campaign trail, she paints a picture of Paradise Bay as a city on the edge of greatness. Jobs? Check. World-class transportation? Check. Miles of shoreline that rival cities such as Chicago and San Diego? Absolutely. But here's the problem. The city's government lacks imagination. Look at this beach. Pitiful. And this lake? Completely underutilized. And this hill? You can't really call it a park unless you make it accessible. But Sheila understands that you can't unlock a city's potential if it's stuck on common issues. And right now, Paradise Bay is under serious pressure. Area businesses are scrambling for workers, and the rent is too damn high.
You said it, the rent is too damn high.
Leaving current and potential residents incredibly frustrated. And while the current administration is stuck in neutral, Sheila promises more than just ideas. She promises to get things done. Her first campaign ad opens with Sheila standing on a rugged hilltop. She announces that she's secured a developer to transform this area into a vibrant new neighborhood. And while this hill might be tough to build on, with its panoramic views and its prime location near downtown, it's about to become the hottest spot in Paradise Bay. And at the ad's climax, Sheila's vision is brought to life. Enter Russ Kowalski, a top-tier developer from Escanaba and Marquette Island. He's standing beside Sheila at the groundbreaking, thanking her for pushing forward this bold vision. Even he admits, I can't believe how creative Sheila's plans are. The ad explodes in popularity, but what really makes waves is what people start seeing around the city. Cranes in the sky, progress happening fast. But Sheila isn't just looking skyward. She's secured approvals to connect Lake Superior with Thunderhead Lake. A plan years in the making, but Sheila knows how to play it like it's a brand new victory, and it's a game changer for the city. With this connection, properties around Thunderhead Lake immediately surge in value. And that's because boats docked in the lake will now have direct access to Lake Superior. This is what imagination and transformation look like. So in today's episode, we'll work to transform this rugged, forgotten piece of land into the newest jewel of Paradise Bay. And we'll make sure this neighborhood fits seamlessly into the city, a natural extension of its growth and future. And if you're excited to respect the topography, hit the like button. And if you're more interested in knowing how James feels about all of this, hit the like button for that too, and let me know what you're thinking down in the comments. Or leave an emoji letting me know what you think about this project for the sake of engagement. But before we jump in, if you're a content creator or streamer and are looking for 100% DMCA safe music, check out Master Plan Music. That's right, you can use the music that I've had produced for my videos in your content for free. And you can do that by either downloading it from my website or streaming it from your favorite music streaming platform. Just be sure to include the words Master Plan Music in your video or stream description on YouTube to ensure that your video is whitelisted. And on Twitch, you don't have to do anything. It's completely safe to use. And with that out of the way, let's get back to the video. Hello and welcome back to Magnolia County. The very first thing I want to do today is build a canal linking Lake Superior to Thunderhead Lake. And I can already hear some of you clicking away at your keyboard saying how much you hate this. It is an extravagant project, an expensive project, an environmental catastrophe waiting to happen, completely unnecessary. And here's the thing, under normal circumstances, I would agree with you, but in this particular instance, I don't. And that's because I always intended to have this connection on the map. In fact, I attempted to make it when I was building the map and failed miserably. This was actually supposed to be a nod to Madison, where we have a lock system that links Lake Mendota to Lake Monona and allows you to take a small boat between the two lakes. In fact, the evidence of this is hidden in the contour lines. You can see that right here, there is a shallow valley, and this is actually where the lakes were connected at one point in time. However, you can also see that this white line is sea level, and the problem I was having is as soon as I would make this connection here, the water levels would slowly rise until they were at sea level, which isn't a big deal over here, but on the other side of the map is absolutely terrible. It would completely submerge the village of Hiddenbrook, and I'd already built the highway system when I was building the map, and it completely was submerged, and I just didn't want to rebuild it. I didn't want Paradise Bay to become an island. I wanted this to be a large landmass where I could build right here. So as a result, I built this little land bridge which completely separates Lake Superior from Thunderhead Lake and solved all my problems. But I'm a risky man, and I'm going to try this once again. And what I'm thinking is I'm going to build a small canal, very narrow, very shallow, that links the two of these together. And I'm hoping that evaporation will be our saving grace. But before we can do any of that, we have to be able to measure our water levels. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to use pathways to draw a couple of water level lines. So the first one will be right here, right at our lake's current elevation. I want to go 2 meters above that. This one's just for our own personal knowledge. And then we'll go 2 meters above that because that is the elevation of the village of Hiddenbrook. If we reach this path right here, the village of Hidden Brook is no more, so we cannot reach that level. I'm going to enable snap to 90-degree angles and snap to the zoning grid. The reason why I want to do that is I'm going to use paths to create some nodes for our canal. Now, I want the canal to be 3 units wide, and I want to be able to slope to the canal. So I'm going to grab a node right here, and then I'm going to go 5 units over, and that gives us our 3 units for the canal and 1 unit on either side to slope to. And now let's use our level terrain tool. We'll take the brush size, lower it to 30. And I want to go a little bit below sea level. And I can actually find that over here. I'm going to grab this height. It's about 88 meters. And we'll see how this looks. Perfect. So now I'm going to slope using the slope terrain tool between this height and our lake. And now all we have to do is sever this road and this train connection and create a bridge, and water should start flowing. And I think I'm going to have to take this a little bit further back and take a look at our water pipes, because there's a bit of a hump right here. I'm guessing that we have water pipes. Indeed we do. So I will delete these pipes, and I'm going to take the path back another couple of units. And I'm doing this so that I can delete this segment of road. We're going to drop it down a bit further. And now as I make this connection, it should be a nice bridge all the way across. And I can actually use these paths as the start and end points of this bridge. Or key wall, because I just screwed it up. And that should be just about perfect. The last thing I've got to do is link up that water line, and we are good. So now I want to go and kind of soften the terrain here so that it looks a bit more natural. And for that, we'll use a soften terrain tool. I'm going to go with a 20 brush size and a brush strength of no more than 35. And that should give me exactly what I need to really control everything about the slopes right here. And there we go. It is very shallow. It is not very wide, but you should be able to get a boat through here, and that is all that we were looking for. So now, to make sure that we're not going to flood out Hidden Brook, we are going to let this simulate for a little while, and hopefully we don't cross this line right here. Again, the second line's okay. The third line up here is bad. And I've let this run for a few minutes, and it appears that everything is okay. We are just a little bit higher than our previous elevation line, but not to our second or third lines. And ultimately what this means is that over here, we're not flooding into the village of Hidden Brook, which makes me very, very happy. So with our canal complete, let's lay out our roadways. And now the real fun begins. We're about to create a roadway layout that maximizes the development potential of the hill while also respecting the topography. But before we can do any of that, we need to urbanize the roads leading up to this neighborhood. So that's this portion of the highway right here and the highway that goes all the way around the hill. So I'm going to take Superior Street, and I want to run that a little bit beyond this intersection. That might seem odd, but the reason I want to do that is so that I preserve my roadway name. If I were to stop at the intersection, this name would wrap around the corner, something I've learned the hard way on more than one occasion. So this is kind of a hacky way of solving that, but it works 100% of the time. Now for the Lilac Highway, I want to use one of the custom roads that we created. It's this 2-lane road with a median. This will preserve some extra space so we can add capacity in the future if we want to, without overbuilding right now. So for this one, I'll try to center this. And it looks like we'll have to rebuild a little bit of the road right here. It's probably the easiest way to fix it anyway. Perfect. Now, I think we're probably going to have to buy a map tile over here. And the main reason for that is I want to be able to loop a road all the way around the hill without working outside of our map tiles. So before I upgrade this, let's just buy this tile right here. And there we go. So let's bring this road a little bit beyond the edge of the hill, maybe right about here. And now I want to focus on the collector network, so I'm going to build this road that goes around the hill. And for all of these roads that we're using for our collectors, I think I'm going to build 2-lane normal roads. These are going to be an easy way to figure out what the collector roads look like, and we'll use a narrower road for all of our local roads, a custom road. Now, the first thing we've got to do here is a bit of grading, because you can see that there is a lot of elevation change right here. So I'm going to begin by building a stub at a 90, and this will tell us where our road is going to need to turn. So I'm going to use our slope terrain tool with a brush size of about 20 and a strength of about 35. And you're going to see me defaulting back to that brush over and over and over while we build roads. That's because this is the exact width of a road, and it's very, very gentle. So it'll take us a long time to screw up, and that's really important when you're working with hills. And there we go. That is exactly what we're going to be doing over and over and over again. But we're going to switch gears for a moment, because the other thing that we're going to be doing is leveling pads for buildings. And right here, you can see that if we were just to run the road through here, there wouldn't be very good locations to put buildings. So I'm going to increase the brush size to about 60 and level out building pads in this location, as well as places where the road can go. Now, I've decided to cut in both directions, thinking that we're taking soil from the hill and pushing it into the water. We're also going to be building a beach right here, so there are going to be a few competing interests. And I want to build this road closer to the water. I've got a game plan for this that I think you're really going to like. And that brings us to our canal. And I want to build our bridge across the canal before we do anything else. So for this, I'm going to flatten both sides. And then I just know that if I try to build a bridge across here, we're just going to block the water. We're going to key that up. That's not what we want. So we're going to use a City Skylines 1 technique and just drop the ground right here incredibly low. And this will allow us to just build a bridge right across here without any problems. And then after that, we'll use our slope terrain tool to restore our slope right through here. And now we're at a bit of a crossroads. Where exactly do we take this? I've got two ideas. Number one, I think that we need to make a connection to this road right here. This is our main shopping district. It's where we have a lot of transit, a lot of activity. I think it's where people want to go. The other location is right here. This provides excellent access to our arterial. And I think with these two connections, we will have a lot of mobility in this area. Now, the one thing that's challenging is that right here, we've basically built right up to the side of the hill. So I'm going to do something that's not super realistic, and I think we're going to build a little bit out right here. And that's just kind of an acknowledgement of the tools that we have in the game and the lack of control that at least I have with them when building this sort of facility. And there we go. Now for our second connection, I think it's pretty easy to see where we should go. It almost seems like it's pre-graded out for us. So we are going to slope from right here down to this location right here. And hopefully that gives us good visibility around the corner and over the bridge. And I think I'll wrap this area up by adding a roundabout right here. This is something I probably should have done in the previous episode in this location, and many of you guys let me know in the comments that you think I should have done that, and I completely agree. That said, we've already built that crazy contraption over there, so we'll at least try to rectify it by adding a couple of roundabouts in this neighborhood, starting with this location right here. And now we get to the really fun part of the build, developing a roadway layout for this hillside. But for this, before we just start drawing roads, I want to draw a bit of inspiration, and I decided to look at a city that is notoriously hilly. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Now in Pittsburgh, the way that they're able to develop the hillsides is by having diagonal roads that cut up the side of the hills, and on top of the hills, having narrow block sizes, small lots, and more density than you might expect to see in these areas. So I'm going to take that sort of inspiration and do the exact same thing up here. This will make it worth Russ's time to do all the grading that we're about to do. Now, the first thing I want to do is level out a flat pad up here. And the idea will be that we are taking the soil and pushing it around. So I don't want to build things up or push things down. I want to find a nice height in the middle and spread things out. Now for that, it seems like this area right here, about 123 meters, is a nice midpoint between 129 up here and 119 right here. So I'm going to use this and just spread this around and create a nice flat pad all the way around the top of the hill. And you might already be asking yourself, how is this respecting the topography? In my opinion, what we're doing is pushing soil around without completely changing the terrain. And because of that, I think that this is respecting the topography. If you were going to develop in this area, I think this is what you would have to do to create building sites. And in the game where the assets don't really conform to the terrain all that well, I think that this is the best that we can do. So now we need to find a way up here, and we don't want to cul-de-sac this. So it's not just finding one way up, we actually need to find a few ways up. So I want to begin right here so that we have a connection off Cedar Street. Now I'm thinking that we'll just try to connect right about here. So this is 123 meters, we're dropping down to 100. So we've got to cover quite a bit of ground. And then for all of the roads on the hill, I think we are going to begin with our parking lot roads. I like these because they're zonable, they're narrow, we should be able to have more of them up here. And I think in general, they look very appropriate for this type of a build. And it looks like we got a little under 9% grade, which, while steep, is probably as best as we could hope for in this area. And it probably means that this is the freight route and most likely the collector in this area. Next up, I think that this location right here seems like another natural point to get down the top of the hill. And it seems like we could have a 10% or so grade in this location. And that was truly aspirational. It looks like we're going to have about 14%. And that ultimately just means that this is probably not appropriate for freight. Now, one thing I'm thinking, if it's already not going to be appropriate for freight, I might switch this back around. And that's because I don't want there to be that close of an intersection right here, considering this is our major arterial and this is our collector. And there we go. I think that this is much more rational. Now, I got to find another way up that is not quite so steep, and I'm thinking that it might be over here. So what we'll do is kind of have a bit of a frontage road to Superior Street. And this might even be the start of a grid in this location. So I'm going to turn this road sharply and we'll head right up right about here. And that's 11%, so it's not perfect, but I think it's better than the 14 that we had in the other location. So we're going to live with a bit of imperfection. Now, I think we could have one more way up the hill, and I want this one to be kind of complicated. What I'm thinking is maybe we will loop back around here and have some sort of a switchback in this location. I think it could be really fun. So for this one, let's level out a larger pad right here, and then we'll slope up. And there we go. I think that that looks absolutely outstanding. I love that so much. So now let's figure out the roadway layout up here. And what I want to try to do is maximize our developable potential. And now I have an interesting idea. So I decided to have this larger lot right here that maybe we'll put some city services in, but I think that we need to have more blocks up here. Now, obviously we could just have one set of buildings right here, but I just don't think we're going to get enough density to make this development make sense. So instead of doing that, I want to snap to the zoning grid, and I'm going to bring this back so that we have 5 tiles in depth. Now, the main reason for that is I want to have an alleyway, and then we'll have row homes or something of that nature up here fronting both sides, and maybe even get another building on the side of this road up here. And I think that this will give us enough density to make developing up here and doing all of this grading make sense. And now it feels like we could do more with the side of the hill right here. So I'm going to try to level out one more pad. And then lastly, let's build things out right here at the base of the hill. And I think we're going to do a bunch of grading, basically grading between this road and this one to make things nice and smooth. And there we go. Decided to do a little bit of freestyling so that we have a couple of blocks back here, which will give us more density once again. Now that does mean that I did a couple of nasty things to the hillside right here, but you know what? We're gonna be doing a lot of grading and I'm gonna take a few liberties, and this is one of the spots where I'm gonna do it. Now, one of the reasons I felt so comfortable doing this is that we're gonna do even more grading. We're gonna be adding gravel paths all over the place. These are the gravel paths that we found in the Road Builder workshop that I absolutely adore. So for these, again, we are going to want to grade to make sure that they're not overly steep. And I basically just want to cut a whole bunch of time off from traveling by using a path. Were all of those super necessary? Maybe not, but I had a ton of fun putting them in, so I'm glad that we did it. Now, before we move on from the roadway layout, there's one more thing that I want to change. So along Green Street right here, we are going to have a beach. And I think a lot of people are going to be attracted to this area. So what I want to do is upgrade this road to a parking lot road. And I understand this sounds crazy, but hear me out. If we add this right here, we could have parking right along the beachfront, which to me feels very beachy. And because we have all these crossroads right here, people will be able to cross from one side of the road to the other. And I think it's a really beachy vibe, and I really dig it. So I'm gonna upgrade this all the way up and down where I think our beach is going to be. And there we go. That looks outstanding. I love that so much. This is gonna turn out really, really well right here. And while there's still a lot that we have to do in this area, such as a whole bunch of grading, I think we're gonna move on and build out some of our city services. This part of building a city and city skylines has always fascinated me because it happens the exact opposite of how it would happen in the real world. In the real world, when a plan would be submitted for a neighborhood, the city planner would actually be responsible for taking that plan and routing it around all the different city agencies to make sure that there's adequate coverage available with existing buildings. So you want to make sure that you have enough police and fire, school coverage, even plows, making sure that existing city services can cover this area. And if they can't, the planner would also be required to figure out what it would take to get coverage in this area, whether that's land dedication or additional money, whatever it would take. The developer could be on the hook for those things. Now, in City Skylines 2, we lay out all the roads and then we look backwards and we go, what is it going to take to bring this area online? So it's kind of similar, but kind of the exact opposite. So we are going to be doing this, and very similar to what we've been doing with our other neighborhoods, I want to add a district around here so that we can assign specific services to this area. Now, an interesting thing about this, because of the layout and the terrain, I think our coverage is going to be pretty bad with some of the city services. So we're going to have to keep an eye out for those. But first things first, again, we've got to add a district around here. And there we go. We have Rosewood Terrace. And though that's a lovely name, I'm guessing that you guys can come up with a better one. So if you have a name for this neighborhood, drop it in the comments below. And if you want to be selected, having a story for why that name exists, it goes a long ways. Now, we are going to go through all of our services one by one, and I'm going to start out with our healthcare and death care. And as I suspected, it's not very good over here. And that's all because of our roadway layout. Now, we could grab one of our medical clinics. We definitely have a need for more medical clinics, but I think I'm going to go with a small one here just to serve this area. And in the future, I think we need to add a hospital to Paradise Bay, but that is a future thing, not a today thing. Now, in terms of where I'm going to place all these services, this area right here, I'm reserving for an elementary school. That's going to be a constant need. So I'm going to try to fit our other city services in this little area right here in the surrounding area. And then we've got to make sure that we are assigning a district here. And for our death care, I'm just going to take our cemetery and once again, assign that to this new district. Next, we have garbage management. We looked at that in the previous episode. I'm not overly concerned about that. And then we have fire and rescue. And this is one that actually looks okay, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's a little bit yellow right here, but I think it's going to be fine. Unless we see major issues, I'm not going to think about it. Next, we'll take a look at police. Again, coverage looks okay. For administration, that's things such as welfare offices. Not much we can do there. For schools, this is my shame right here. We are actually way behind on coverage. I don't know what to do to catch up, short of spamming schools at some point, but I don't want to do that today. What we are going to do is make sure that we are adding an elementary school. And this is actually part of the reason I added this large elementary school in the previous neighborhood. I'm not going to do that here. We'll add just a reasonable sized elementary school right about here. And then I'm going to do this mashy thing that I've really been enjoying doing, where I basically take the elementary school wings and rather than clipping them to the sides or the road, I will jam them into the building like this. And reasonably, I think it ends up looking okay. It's a little bit strange right there with that overhang, but I think it's passable. So we're gonna just deal with this. I'm going to move this a little bit closer to Briar Rose Street though, because Primrose right here would have a lot of traffic. And we'll likely need a fence or something back here to prevent kids from accidentally walking onto this street. And our operating district for this school will be just this neighborhood. And that brings us to transit service. And this is something that I said I wanted to review in all neighborhoods. Now, I've been giving this one a lot of thought, and I think that we are going to hold off from adding transit to this neighborhood for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, I'm really concerned about the slopes to get up to what will be the densest portion of this neighborhood. I don't know that buses could actually do it in the winter time. The other concern I have is that it's really disconnected. So unless there's more development around here, I just don't see this route happening in the short term. So maybe as part of a larger restructuring, when we take a look at Voyager Portage and Johnson's Grove, maybe at that point, we will add service over here, but we need to restructure the existing routes before we can do that. And that's not a today thing. Next, we have our communications services. So I want to take a look at our post office coverage, and that one is pretty bad, as is our telecom coverage. So I wanted to look at these individually, and we'll start out with our post office coverage. And I think I'm just going to add a small post office up here to this little city services area that I mentioned before. And I've moved these buildings around to conform to the roadway layout a bit more so that we have these spaces right here where maybe we could do something with a park or something of that nature. Now, as far as our telecom coverage goes, we could probably get away with doing nothing here, but I think that we should do more. And that's because if we take a look over at Charity Island and our paper mill, we have a coverage gap for our internet service. And I think if we add a telecom tower, we could serve this entire area really well. So I'm thinking across from this neighborhood on this bluff over here, we'll actually add our coverage because we should be able to fit something right up here very nicely. And there we go. And the nice thing about this is, again, it's going to provide us with exceptional coverage everywhere here. You can see that that filled that missing gap that we had in this entire area. Now, the funny thing, looking at parks, our coverage is actually really, really good because we have a ton of parks over in Sugar Grove, Johnson's Grove, whatever you want to call it. But still, I think that we should have plenty of parks in our neighborhoods. So we'll make sure that we've got small playgrounds within walking distance to every single child in this area. And there's going to be residential basically everywhere through here. And then I want to do something interesting down here. So I'm going to add a sports park. And this is going to be a trick that I actually picked up from Sully that I'm really excited to do. So this is a custom Sully asset that we're going to use here. And I want to add a basketball court. And I think we could probably go maybe across from the elementary school. And one thing I've not enjoyed about this asset is it's just very, very bright. But Sully's released some decals that you can actually put right on top of the basketball court to calm it down a bit. So I'm going to take this dark basketball court and just apply this right on top of this. And by using Move It, I was able to bring that right on top of that super colorful basketball court. And now it just looks a ton more reasonable to me. And if I want to make it even better, I'll get rid of these props that don't make a ton of sense to me. I think that that looks absolutely outstanding, except that now I lost it again. There we go. Step away from the basketball court. That's looking really, really good in my estimation. And then I mentioned wanting to do something special here with a park in the center. So I think that we'll grab one of our small, tiny city parks. We'll turn off all of our snapping, and then we'll manually place this thing. And the nice thing is when we detail later, we can play with the surfaces to make this look perfect. I am curious though, if we could do something like this. And there we go. We basically turned this into a small version of the pass-through park, which I think really is going to be nice in this area. A nice amenity considering this is it's a pretty constrained environment. So having something like this is going to be really important. And with our city services in place, let's add a bit of zoning. Before we start zoning the entire area, let's talk about our general plan. Now, at the start of the episode, I mentioned that you get one of two things on challenging terrain. You either get more expensive buildings or you get higher density to make up for the cost of all of the prep work. So I think that on top of the hill here, we are going to have more density than you might expect. So we are going to have some mid-rises, we are going to have a ton of row homes, and we might even have one low-rent building. And we're going to pepper in a couple of single-family homes, but we'll imagine that those are going to be basically maxed out at some point in time, capturing all the views and things of that nature. Down here along the shore, I want to have a strong mix of uses. This is going to be a very walkable area, a place that people are going to want to be out and about because the beach is going to be right in front of it. So I have a feeling that this will be a very popular area. And then for everything else, it's going to be lower density single family in these flat areas where you might expect that there would be some nicer homes, but the developing is a little bit easier in those locations. The other thing I'm going to point out is that I didn't add a path connection to Superior Street from this neighborhood, and I think I have to. So as we're filling things in over there, we're likely going to add a connection or two to this street over here. And there we go. Everything is loaded in with zoning, and you can tell it definitely has more density than you might have expected to see up in this area up here, and down here, there's a really good mix of uses. Now, I wanted to point out two things that I did though. So right here, I added a stub road. It's kind of a reminder to myself where I want the local roadway network to continue in the future. And then I also added a stub right here with a roundabout. And that's because we've got this little peninsula right here, and I think we've got an opportunity for maybe a unique building or something of that nature. So why don't we add one of our signature buildings? Something like the Theater Actor Mansion, I think, is a great fit right here. And this is a property fit for a prominent resident, which is why we are going to make this Sheila Johnson's house. So this is where she is living in this new neighborhood right here. And with our zoning in place, let's move on to developing our beach. This is a build that I've been looking forward to taking on for quite some time because we have a whole bunch of beaches that we need to build in this entire community. But this will be the first one, and once again, we'll be using some of Sully's absolutely amazing assets. But before we can do anything with that, we have to create the space for our beach. So what I'm going to do is spread this out a little ways. I'm thinking that we are going to have maybe some sort of a boardwalk or plaza or a walking area right along the side of the road. And then I want our beach to feel really, really gentle. I want the transition to be really nice. So I'm going to take this height right here, which is 77 meters, which I think is going to be relatively gradual. And we're going to use that to draw where our beach is going to end. And then we're going to use the slope terrain tool to draw our beach. So for this, I want to get fairly close to the water, maybe 2 meters above it. And then we are going to slope from the edge of this up to 79 meters. This is going to take a while. We just got to be patient and be willing to put in the work. Okay, that was not the height of realism, obviously, but I think it's what we have to do if we want this beach to look nice. So what I've tried to do is kind of terrace things off a bit. Now, before we draw the beach in, I want to draw in that boardwalk that I was talking about, or that pathway along here. So what we're going to do is, using some of Sully's concrete tiles, I just want to go right along the side of this road and add a path. And I'm going to call a mulligan on that, actually, for one specific reason. I think I want to have a fence here to frame this, and I think if I add the fence first, I should be able to snap onto the fence when I draw in this path. So let's draw in this fence first, and I'll go with something fairly small. This residential fence, I think, will do the trick. And I'm going to try to parallel this road. And I'm wondering if I use the parallel mode and I modify the offset, if I can make this absolutely perfect, and then I'll delete this one along the side of the road. Okay, so now you can see that I was able to get this fence all the way along here. I will need to delete some segments of it, but the first thing I want to do is delete this back fence. This one is just so that we could parallel the road. And now we'll once again use our concrete tiles, but this time around, well, I can't snap to the fence, but at least I know where it is. And I think that that is looking pretty darn good. Now it's time to draw our beach. And for this, we're going back into the surfaces, and we'll go underneath sand surfaces where we have a whole bunch more Sully assets. Now, we are going to have a fairly manicured beach, so we're not going to necessarily be using all of these everywhere, but do know that there is an order that they will actually layer each other in, and it all corresponds to the correct order, basically. So we want to start out with our base. Then we'll have a wet light sand and then a wet dark sand closer to the water. So for this, I will begin up here. I want to make sure I have anarchy on because I can overlap these, and I should be overlapping these. So for the base, I'm going to place that basically everywhere. And we could go right through the road, which is absolutely fantastic. It makes things a lot simpler for us. So you might look at this and think, you know, this is good enough. We can add some bushes around here and that's going to be fine, but we can do so much better. So we've got this gold sand wet light, and this is basically going to be the furthest extent that high tide would go, where the water might be wet. So we're going to try to follow this and maybe make it a little bit more meandering. Oh, that already looks a ton better. So you can see that this is just wet sand, but then we also have the golden sand wet, and this is going to be our wettest sand. That said, I'm noticing that I kind of made a mistake right here. So what I think I have to do is pull this out so that this lines up with this side here. It just makes a ton more sense. There we go. Same thing over there. That makes a ton of sense. So now we're going to go with our wet sand. And for this one, I want to follow the water line very closely. And there we go. There is our wettest sand. And that looks, that looks really, really good. The main areas of concern for me are, again, going to be at the edges. And it's just a matter of pulling these out a little bit. And now we've got a bit more work by Sheila's house. So I want to blend this further. And because we are not going right up to concrete, I'm going to use this golden sand thick to kind of demonstrate that the sand is starting to break down. And there we go. Now for these ones, because they're see-through, I had to adjust the boundaries to make sure that they were basically snug against one another and not overlapping like we were doing with the sand, but I think it looks okay. Now this has really sharp edges now, which don't look great. Thankfully, Sully's also put together some blending decals that we can use. So for this, we'll go underneath the beach decals, and it's just a matter of finding the correct decal for the blending area. So for instance, we use the golden sand. So the golden sand base, is what we're going to use to try to blend things along the base. And you can see as we go along here, it just starts to look a lot more natural, less sharp. And then we'll do the exact same thing with the wet and the dark sand and then all of the other blending options that we have here. We have decals for all of them. And there we go. I've got to cut myself off. I'm having an absolute blast putting this down. It's almost like painting. I mean, you're doing blending techniques, and it's just, there's so much that you can do. So much that you can do. Now, one thing I absolutely want to do is get rid of some of these harsh edges. You can see them through all of our surfaces. So if we do something like that, I think it'll turn out much better. And then I got to make sure that I keep this nice and level up here. Okay, so now we have a beach, but it looks basically dead. So the way that we're going to resolve that is by adding in some invisible paths. So what I want to do is basically grab right here, and then we're going to have some paths going along the beach. Okay, so now we've got all these paths here. I also want to add connections right here to each of these different areas. And then we've got to find a reason for people to actually take these paths. And I think that that might be one of our struggles, but I have an idea. But first, let's clean up these fences. And for that, I just want to add nodes so I can delete segments of fence. Now, if we want people to walk here, we need to have reasons to walk here. And those reasons could be that, oh, actually, I don't even need to. I was going to fudge some and basically remove a portion of sidewalk along a road here. We've already got a bit of activity. And honestly, maybe I'll just take that as a win. Now, a couple of other decorations that might be kind of fun to have here would be things such as umbrellas and maybe some blankets. And there we go. I think that this looks really, really good. We did a little bit of detailing just to try to make it feel a little bit more beachy, adding those umbrellas and the blankets, which unfortunately all seem to have wine and food on them, but still gives you the vibe of going to the beach. And if I can figure out ways to make this even better, I'm going to do it. So if you've got some ideas, let me know down in the comments below. But for now, we've got people walking on the beach. We've got some decorations. It feels beachy to me. And with that, I think it's time to move on to a little bit of landscaping and detailing. For our landscaping and detailing today, I have a personal challenge to myself. I want to try not to smooth anything out, or as few things as possible. So instead of smoothing things out, I'm going to use dense landscaping and lots of boulders to try to hide the lumpies and the bumpies and the jaggedy edges. Now, I am going to completely denude the area of trees before I do this, and I've got to be really careful because all these decals I placed, if I were to go into the tree brush and to start deleting things, I'll pull all of those up, as well as all of the props I placed at the beach. So I've got to be very careful with that, but that is where we're going to begin. there we go. I went really hard in the landscaping, potentially too hard, and I'm very curious to know how you guys are going to feel about this. I really wanted it to feel like this was set in a dense forest, and I think I've accomplished that, but I think I've also kind of hidden the build. But at that, the parts that you can see, to me, feel really good. It feels really natural. It feels like a place that I'd like to live in, except that got this nice house here and you can't see the view because I put so many trees there. But even at that, I do think this is kind of what you see when you go across Google Maps. You see that there's generally a dense canopy in this part of the world, and I've tried to replicate that, and I think it's been successful. But I want to know down in the comments how you feel about it. I also thought it might be beneficial to see this area in the context of the rest of the city and kind of see how much more landscaping this has. It probably means that I need to thin it out here or densen it up elsewhere. And then really that's kind of a reflection of the map itself. When I made the map, I wasn't sure how many trees would impact performance, but for all the decals and trees that I've placed today, it seems as though things are running really, really well. So I'm quite pleased with the way that things have turned out. So with our detailing complete, there's only one more thing left to do. That's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. Now let's make a couple of fixes based on your feedback. And the first one is coming from Ice Dree, who left an excellent comment requesting a dedicated bus station near this shopping center. And you know, I hadn't even considered that, but there would be a lot of demand for transportation in this area. I understand it's a suburban shopping mall, but think about the number of jobs and the number of people coming to this destination. So I do think it would make some sense. We could have more routes coming here in the future. And for now, what we're gonna do is eliminate this, make that parking lot rational once again, and then we're gonna grab one of our small bus stations, the one that we saw in Tampere, and I'm gonna place that right here. And right away, I'm going to add in the taxi stop upgrade and some station amenities to kind of flesh this area out a little bit. And there we go. And now we have to modify this road just a little bit because right now there's a median that would prevent buses from going in and out of here. So what I'll do is grab a 2-lane road that doesn't have the median. I'm going to double click right here to try to add a node, and then I will upgrade just this segment or downgrade depending how you look at it so that buses could go in and out in either direction. And now we'll just take this bus route and pull it right in there. And I guess all that median work didn't need to happen because it didn't even matter. But in the future, it will be a really important facility. So Ice Dree, I really appreciate that comment. This was a very good suggestion. The next suggestion comes from Canuck Errant, who suggests that we name a neighborhood after a French explorer. And honestly, that makes a ton of sense. This whole area was explored by the French, so many things are named after French explorers. So I think for this one, we will name this LaSalle. I love that. And then for our final name, French Friar suggests that we name this neighborhood Granny Flats, and I absolutely love the story behind this. Basically, Old Lady Flats used to own this land. Everyone called it Granny Flats, and as a result, the name is stuck and it's the name of the neighborhood. It's also a nod to the new song that's going to be coming out shortly. I'm just going to get the album uploaded, called Granny Flats, which is actually a node to accessory dwelling units. So lots and lots of reasons why that's a great name. So thank you so much, French Friar, for that suggestion. And then I have one small fix myself. And that is, I want to take these streets right here and create one new variant. So we are going to use this as a template and make this parking lot road with parking. Now, I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but the reason why I want to have it here is we've used this road all up and down here to basically be a street that's perfect for some of our townhomes. But the problem is these townhomes don't have parking, and as a result, none of these people have a place to put their car. And considering we have no transit, it feels very short-sighted to have no parking. So we're gonna do something like this. I think it'll do the trick for us. And then I'll just need to add this throughout the area and realign the roads a bit. And there we go. So you're already seeing some of this getting utilized right in front of these. I think it was really, really necessary that we added these here. And who knows, maybe in the future we can do something better with that, but for now, I think it is exactly the way it needs to be. But with that, I think we're gonna leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. I've really had a blast putting this one together. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And this save will be available on Paradox Mods. And I'm really excited to let you know that Tygon has released the excellent rail assets that I've been using all throughout this build onto Paradox Mods. So I will leave that as a dependency, and I will leave a link to those assets in the video description. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.